Ricky, you got some lotion? I guess I waited too late. Never mind, it's okay. I'll just do it.
That's on camera.
Luckily. And we back. We've been on for a minute dealing with COVID-19.
The boys are back in town.
Yes, we are back in town. We are good. We're here and hope you've been doing good with everything that's going on. And happy to see you, man.
You too, man.
It's been a while, man.
It's been 3 long months, but we're back here at Timeless Studios. And boy, do we have a show planned.
Yes, we have State Representative Sedrick Denson here. Talk about the climate of everything that's going on throughout the city and just throughout the nation. So, we decided to go a different route and just we need to know what's going on. So we talked to him.
Yeah, we want to speak to the times. Music can kind of be on the back burner right now. There's a lot more pressing issues here in Cincinnati and all over the United States. We're allies and we want to continue to speak up and provide a platform to what's going on right now. So going to talk to Sedrick Denson, repping the 33rd,
yes,
the fighting
33rd.
And of course, we're going to end the show with a special In the Booth performance from Chris Crooks with his hit song, Caine and Sharif.
Man, in the booth, not in the booth, in the. He in the booth.
In the booth, is that what we're going with?
In the booth. Booth, B-O-O-F, by the way.
So yeah, like we said, we hope you and your family have been safe, good health, staying inside, and fighting the good fight.
Exactly. We are. And look, we in it together.
We're here. We want to thank you guys for rocking with us on the Instagram Live. We had to do what we had to do. Couldn't get in the studio. So thank you guys for tuning in with us. But as of right now, we're back and we're better than ever.
Yeah. Can we just do a little toast?
Let's do a little toast.
Pretty dope, bro.
A little toast right here.
Toast to being back. DNA.
And on that note, let's talk to Sedrick Denson. Let's see what he's got going on.
33.
So we'll be right back. And we're here with State Representative Sedrick Denson of the Fighting 33rd District. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm great. We're here. Thank you for coming in. It's the first time we've had a
political figure. Yeah, I feel like this is a big deal for us. You know what I'm saying?
So. It might be the last time.
I'm glad you were able to come through because with the climate of everything, I feel like we needed someone as of your stature to share some ideas and just break down everything that's going on. You know what I'm saying?
I appreciate the opportunity. There is a lot going on, and how we look at it and come out of this better is something we all got to figure out together. So I appreciate the platform to be able to talk about it.
For sure. How did you get into politics? Is it something you always wanted to do as a kid, or?
Absolutely not. No. Politics for me was never in anything that I thought I would be doing. I actually went to performing arts here, and I majored in drama. And as a result of being at performing arts for a number of years, ended up being in dance, percussion, music theater, and I was well on my way to New York. And I learned about politics when a politician by the name of, he's now a senator, but at the time he was a council member, Cecil Thomas. He came to my government class and he talked about being a former police officer and wanting to use his background in being a police and now being on council and how he could change the world and all the things with African-American males and how they're disproportionately seen by the police. And it really caught my attention mainly because my brother had just got sentenced to life in prison.
Wow.
And so it stuck out in my head and I was like, wow, what do I do with this? Because it's relevant in my life. But I kept my head down and I did what art students do. You get back to class and you keep dancing or playing the drums or getting on stage. But it never went away in the back of my head, hearing him talk about that. And he came back and was saying, if you ever want to get involved and do something in politics, come work on our campaign. And in the midst of that, I learned about a guy who's on city council right now, Wendell Young. His mother kept me until I went to kindergarten. And so he was like family. And he said, hey, I'm running for council. And I said, hey, this guy just came to my class talking about politics and all this. He said, well, come help me out on my campaign. So we successfully lost 3 races. We were really good at losing. We ran for council. But by then I was kind of bit by the bug. I had given up arts and decided not to go on to New York to pursue my dream. And I was now pursuing what was the fight in the community, and got involved, worked at Community Action Agency. And one day Wendell called and said, hey, there's an appointment on city council. I know we've lost, but they're appointing me to council. I want you to come be my chief of staff. You stuck in there with me when no one else would. So I went to City Hall as the youngest chief of staff with no experience, which is unheard of, and spent 7 years being his chief of staff, trying to learn behind the scenes politics of Cincinnati.
Yeah, what age did you, because you're still relatively young, what age did you start?
Oh gosh, what age was it? That had to have been around 22 or so.
Wow.
Somewhere around there. I literally had no experience at all. And I was down there and I remember looking around going, I am getting ready to lose my mind because all of these folks are moving so fast. And I had my plan. I was ambitious. By then I knew I wanted to run. And I thought I would run and it would be something that was going to happen within my 5-year plan. But I figured out how Cincinnati is just, the politics are so deep and the relationships are just so deep and everything was just so grounded and rooted that I had to step back and actually take some time and go, what do I need to figure out to actually make this meaningful if I'm going to be involved? And so I spent 7 years trying to learn the back end of it and how to make things move and who makes things move before I actually stepped out to say I was going to run for something.
That's very inspirational.
Yeah. I know for me, the stereotypical politician that I see is a older white guy. You know what I'm saying? I don't see a lot of young Black guys, you know what I'm saying, that look like me who are in the position that you are. So that is really dope and inspiring to a lot of people, I'm sure.
It is. Cincinnati, I think one of the main things that really let me know that, because when I was looking at all of the folks that were on council that were Black at the time, they were people like the guy who I was working for, he's older. Cecil Thomas, he's older. And I'm going, gosh, all of these guys are older, but yet 50% of our population in Cincinnati is African American. So where is this next wave that's going to step up and actually be able to take this by the reins? And it wasn't present. And so that was really why I wanted to get involved at that point, because it's it doesn't exist. So what are we going to do to figure out how we go forward and have some institutional knowledge, have some folks that are pouring into somebody young? And it wasn't there. We're getting there now piece by piece, but it's traditionally been just a couple of Black folks that are there. And to your point, a lot of older white men. Every now and then we get a sprinkle of a white woman or so, but it was always, it seemed rehearsed for that person to be there. And I wanted to authentically get in and show people that it's not so much the politics of putting on the suit and tie and doing I think that's what politicians do all the time when they talk. Not doing that, but just being relevant and real so people understand that, I understand how to make things move, but I don't have to play a part, if you will. For that, I want you to see that I'm relevant and I'm real and I understand and I live the experience of understanding where we need to go.
Well, now, what do you I know we talked a little bit off camera about just the segregation and just the progressiveness of Cincinnati. Do you think Cincinnati is better now than it was 10 years ago as far as just moving forward?
Back in 2001 when...
Right. So 2001 was interesting for Cincinnati. For those that don't know, 2001 is when we had our civil unrest of riots that broke out. And it was really just of folks getting tired. So what we're seeing today, relevant to all of the events that have led us to where we are and feeling the way we feel, Cincinnati experienced that in 2001. And really, I see that as a pivotal point. And for us, we were able to go through that, experience the pain. And so when you talk about where we are now, the history of 2001, which a lot of people don't know, is that 2001, when we had our riots in downtown Cincinnati, it's when Black people were fed up with the killing of one of our Black men, Timothy Thomas in downtown. And they went demanding answers from, which is so interesting at that time. it was the Public Safety Committee that they were demanding answers from. And believe it or not, John Cranley was the newly appointed council member who was the chair of that committee.
Oh, wow.
And so he was chairing that committee, and they were demanding answers for the pain that they were feeling, and they weren't getting answers. And they didn't get answers, and so they turned around and walked out of City Hall, and that's what began the riots.
Oh,
wow.
That's what began the riots that we have seen. Out of that came a lot of things. One was a collaborative agreement, which was a federal agreement from the feds being involved all the way down to community organizers on how we do police-community relations, how police interact with the community. But when I look at what we're seeing in Cincinnati today, I see that collaborative agreement, which was good, and it was a start. But what came out of that was what we know today is 3CDC. And 3CDC was where the business community, the political community, and community people came together and said, we need to figure out a way of how we rebuild Cincinnati, because we just burned down our living room, if you will, of downtown. And 3CDC was charged with redeveloping our downtown because it was dilapidated, it was burned down, and businesses were saying, no way in hell are we going to do business with Cincinnati. We're out of here. And so what's really concerning for me is that 3CDC was created off of the riots, off of that pain that African Americans were feeling and seeing and just completely upset about. And today, when you look at Over the Rhine, which was heavily populated with African Americans, you don't see that today. And so we were already off to the wrong start when we did that. We were headed in the direction of fixing an issue that didn't bring everybody back into the community to actually live there.
Right.
And now what you're seeing is that's spreading out. If you will, the staple has been put in Over the Rhine as far as what redevelopment looks like, and it's spreading out to places like Walnut Hills. It's sort of going out, if you will, into our neighborhoods. And so that same model is being used. I mean, I laughed with a friend the other day. I grew up in Bond Hill, which is a predominantly Black community, and I said I saw a Caucasian walking a dog. I said, so it's headed our way. And it's okay, and that's what we want to see, but we want to see it in an integrated way where everybody is able to be in that community. The folks that have lived there, the folks that have been there for generation after generation, still have the opportunity to be there and get some of the benefits that the people coming in are getting, those tax breaks and all those things. So that's the whole political part that breaks down into what we don't get to take advantage of. But on surface, it looks like, well, things are doing well. We're getting new housing. We're doing all this. But in actuality, this started from something that was African Americans in an uproar about something that unfortunately has now left them out of being able to even reside within the city, which is quite concerning.
Oh, very, very informative. You just schooled me on some stuff that I didn't even know about.
I was about 8 years old, a white kid. I lived in St. Bernard, and all I remember is like curfews, and like my parents were kind of taking it serious, and I was just kind of scared, honestly. Like I heard riots, and I really didn't know, what was going on at that age. But it was good to hear you clear it up.
It's a lot. Cincinnati is small. It's small in terms of you have families, you have a lot of people who they've grown up together. They, like anything, when you have a relationship with someone, no matter how bad they do or how good they do, you always want to stand in support of that person because you feel as though that personal connection is there. And so when you look at the history of families here who have wealth and who don't have wealth, that's the same thing. They all have that, I'm going to support you no matter what. And that's what has happened. You've had people who have been in place, who've had wealth, who've had the ability to get things done, and they've perpetuated this situation of, well, even though I may be a council member, but I grew up with this businessman who's bringing this deal to us, and my family knows his family, so I got to make it happen. And then on the other side, you do have, and this is something that I continually say to the Black community when we talk about electing Black officials, you have Black families who have been in politics, if you will, for quite some time. So as well, on that Black side, this family's been there forever, so we got to support whoever their kids are and their grandkids are. When in actuality, what is that getting us in the end? It's getting us what, when you go back to the beginning of that family line, that same school of thought that really disrupted what we're seeing today. So no matter what, that grandkid or that son or daughter or whomever is in place, it's just doing what the top of the line is always put out, which is not fair, and which is why we don't really see change when it comes to Cincinnati. It's because of all those deep-rooted relationships that are so close that sometimes you would never even be able to put together. But if you really sit down and just lay out our timeline, things all seem to make sense, and you go, oh, wow, I get it.
But like, how difficult or how challenging is it to make change with certain policies, with the climate, like with everything that's going on, police brutality? Like, how hard is it to really get something passed and like sent through where the outcome of this would be different?
It's extremely hard. I'll shift and go to my current role as state representative in the legislature. There are 99 members of the Ohio House of Representatives, and 5 of those members are African-American men.
Wow.
2 of those are under the age of 40, me being one and another. And so when you look at where we are today, and you look at the situation that has us in such an uproar, certainly there have been women as well, but African-American men have been the target of what we're seeing. And so out of that, I'm fortunate enough to be a part of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, which is all the African-American state senators and all of the African-American state representatives, where we have a caucus, and we came together and we said that we need to do something. And so right now, which is on the books, is Senate Concurrent Resolution 14. Senate Concurrent Resolution 14 is a resolution where we are declaring Ohio to see racism as a public health crisis. And so when you talk about getting things passed, that is something that we all came together and said, this is a start. Let's get everyone on record for at least recognizing all of the pain, all of the things that happen to us when it comes to job, when it comes to housing, when it comes to everything that we see. Let's get everyone on record from the Senate and from the House as this being a crisis. But out of that, policies have to happen. And so with that, this is an education process. My colleagues, like I said, there's 99 of us. A lot of them are some electeds who've never had to interact with an African-American a day in their life. And so me being there, it puts a different tone to my approach, because again, I will walk in your office, I will not announce myself, and I would just say, hey, what's up? And start talking, because again, it's about that relationship. And that's what we're trying to get out of this. We're trying to build an understanding. So it's not so much politics when we start trying to form policy. It's understanding. And that's really the divide. There's no understanding because everybody is working on politics. Right. He's on this side of the aisle and he looks like this, or she's on this side of the aisle and she looks like this. And so everybody's divided in their school of thought on what means something to them. And so that's why I take the approach. I remember when I first got elected, I walked on the Republican floor up at the State House, and you could see all of the staffers as I was walking the hall, and they're looking like, oh my God, he's lost. And it's like, no, I'm looking for your boss because I just want to pop in and say something. And so when you start that dialogue and you start having those conversations, if I then pop up on the floor and I've got a bill on declaring racism as a public health crisis, if I've popped into some of my colleagues' office and I've broke bread and had dinner with them and I've allowed them to see me in a different light as just being a Democrat and a young Black man, they may be more so willing to step up within their own caucus, their own side of the aisle, and say, hey, Sed's not a bad guy. I know this guy. I understand where he's come from. He's really broke some of this stuff down. And here's why I'm going to make it make sense to you. Those are the kind of things we got to start doing, because the reality of it is they come from areas where folks who care deeply about the issues that we do don't live. So it's incumbent upon me as a representative to help make them understand. Because at the end of the day, I got to be able to say a majority of 99 people are supporting whatever we're putting forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are now, and that's where we're trying to get something passed.
I think, that's the big disconnect. Like, you have people, making policies and changes that are affecting a certain, community, a larger community in the city. Was like, you don't have any, nothing to go off of. Just what you see.
Is absolutely nothing to go off of. And that's why these kind of platforms are so important. I mean, when we were just up there last week, and I could hear a lot of people saying, because of some of the protests in Columbus, they've broken out the windows of the State House, and they have a tunnel that goes underground where because our offices are not technically in the State House, we have to either walk underground or we can walk across the street. I always walk outside so I can walk across the street. Well, in this case, all the protesters are out there. And I can remember a lot of them saying, you may or may not want to do that. Those protesters out there, they'll get you. And I'm going, no, they'll get me when they realize that I understand. And so going past them and letting them know, hey, I'm walking in here to try to affect some change on the very thing that you're out here saying and doing. And that's one of the main things that I continually say, that we have got to give the protesters and they're peaceful. But in large part, they are peaceful. There are some in any situation where you have people and you go, why in the hell did you do that? Right. That's stupid. And so they do that. But in large part, you have to let people know, I'm here for you. I'm willing to work with you. And I always say we have to be guilty as legislators of giving the next step. And so a lot of times they say, well, we protested, we marched, and nothing happened. Well, here I'm saying from the state level, we have now put forth racism as a public health crisis in the state of Ohio. That's the next step. That's the action on the table. So after you've protested, after you've done whatever you thought you needed to do to get something out of this, I'm saying to you, now I need you to come to Columbus and testify in committee. Go before those people. Because I can sit there, as I said, with my colleagues and try to make them understand, but go before them, testify. That's your right to do. Testify, make them understand, make them get where you're coming from. Let them hear your pain. Let them hear what you've dealt with, so they understand why this is so necessary to pass. So then, because even with the civil rights movement, they didn't just march and protest and go home. They went through that same process. But our generation, because we've been glamorized, being able to do things through social media and stand with our fist up and post our picture in black and white and, and all those sort of things. But it's going, no, if you're really in this and we've got something on the table and you don't show up, then the question becomes, how real are you really? Right. Because we've got something on the table. Did you show up to Columbus? If you couldn't make it to Columbus, did you submit written testimony that made sure those politicians knew where you were coming from? If you can't do any of that, then you're not in what we're calling the marathon. You're in the sprint. And in most cases, the sprint is to get some recognition. And for what? For us to get nothing at the end of the day.
I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know, like outside of signing petitions on social media, using hashtags, marching, like you said, like, I don't know, what would the next, not me, of course, I'm not in the political field. Like, what would be the next thing? I'm like, they post, call so-and-so they can, make a change to this. But yeah, I feel like my peers, we don't know, like, what the next step is. So I'm glad you...
Yeah, and that's part of my responsibility, is to make sure you do know, and not so much as because you will see those things where call this person and say this, and that is actually important. Whenever an issue comes through, even just in my office alone, we track everything. I want you to track where they called from, what they had to say, were they for, were they against. And if there's something out of the ordinary, it kind of scares people sometimes. I will actually call that person back. And they're like, whoa, you actually called. I'm like, yeah, you said something that I wanted to talk about. So, which is more so a bigger thing. If we got to elect people who actually are willing to do the work. But those are the next steps. Steps are on the table, and we have to take those seriously and start to weigh in. So my idea is that if we look at all the protests that have happened in just Cincinnati, if I could just reach out to that one convener that convened all of those and say, if you've got that much power to convene this many people, then I need you to use that same power to say, Here's the next step. We got something else on the table.
Mm.
And that's what we call community organizing is. That's sort of the synergy that we need to grab everybody to be around the table on and say, there is something there. And we can't just one off it and maybe NAACP knows, or maybe this group knows, or maybe these did. No, we need to look at everything that just happened in Hamilton County and say, who convened all this? I got to call all those folks and say, we got something on the table. We need you all to weigh on. And this is going to get us the action that we're looking for. But we also got to take it serious.
Right.
Because what we'll find out is that everybody will march, but not everyone will show up when we need them.
Mm.
Right. And that kind of leads to what I think is important is getting out and vote. That's another way to get your voice heard. I've just seen on social media and stuff, I see a lot of young people saying, I don't want to vote. My voice isn't going to be heard. To those people, could you explain the importance of getting out in November and voting?
Well, in my opinion, if what we've seen in the White House is not enough to drive you to vote, I don't know what is. But seriously, I'm a Democrat, and I've been involved with Democratic politics for a long time. We've always been good at registering people to vote. We've never been good at turning them out to vote. I think right now we've had enough that has happened that I would say the only reason that voting may have seemed as though it has not mattered is because we have not gotten enough people at one time to make it matter and to get something out of. So while we did elect Barack Obama, we didn't give him a Senate or a Congress because it only makes it to his desk if he has a majority of both of those chambers to happen. So I'll say the same thing when people say all politics are local. It's the same thing at the State House. If we don't have enough people in the Senate and then in the House to make it to the governor's desk, then nothing is going to happen. So I would say if you're willing to try everything else, if you're willing to try protesting all the way down for if you're willing to try a day party for whatever you feel as though you're willing to give in and give or take for, how about just try this? And let's all try it at one time in November to see if we get something out of it. Because then you can at least be guilty of saying, I participated, I showed up, I testified. I think it's one of those things where once you actually put some skin in the game, you start to understand the process. And when you understand the process, then you start to understand this is why we haven't got out of it what we should. And so then it becomes incumbent on everyone. Because I tell everybody, don't expect me as one of 99 to do anything for you revolutionary. I can't do this without you.
Right.
And so once you understand that, then you understand that Sedrick can't do anything and make it move and put pressure on his colleagues until emails are flooding it. And that's why you see those things call, because that's pressure. At the end of the day, I think we got to change that narrative. It's got to say, hey, we get elected by people. And if people are flooding my phones and my emails, I start to get scared and go, oh my God, if I don't do what people are telling me to do, I won't be reelected. So change that narrative and understand when a politician shows up, it's not your savior. We don't do you any justice if we're not doing what you have sent us to do. It's one thing to glamorize someone from Hollywood. They should be. That's what Hollywood is. But when a politician walks in the room, it should be to listen to what people want and go back and do that. If you're looking to them for the answers, you're looking in the wrong direction. That's why we have advocacy organizations on every level advocating for every issue. It's to educate us on what we should be doing. Right. So when you look at it that way, it's incumbent upon us to do that and use that leverage to know you've got more power than we got because we're only there because you put us there. And if you put us there, you can take us out of there. And so that's why I would say if people could start to look in that direction of understanding why voting is important and what the leverage is, and once they do that and how to participate.
Okay. One thing I've been seeing on social media, defund the police. And what does that, I've been meaning to ask that, like, what does that really
entail?
Yeah, like, can you explain? I know it's not taking the money away, but you're just moving it around. And is that effective?
I mean, again, I start off by saying I was a chief of staff at City Hall, so I had to work whenever we'd have meetings and my boss would listen to a group on what they wanted. When they walked out of the office, he'd hand me that stack of papers and say, go make it happen. And so when I hear defund the police, one, I'm not quite for sure what it means. It doesn't say enough. I think what it should mean is with funds that are available, and keep in mind, this is not just money that just magically appears. This is taxpayer money. This is your money. This is what when you talk about return on investment, this is what you have invested into and you deserve something out of. And so when you say defund the police, I would say we need to change the narrative and say, let's retrain the police. Because at the end of the day, that's what needs to happen. We need to invest funding in all of the de-escalation training and we need to really take a look and this is why some of these conversations, when you start to look at politics, become okay for politicians, because politicians, just in Cincinnati alone, city council controls the budget of the police department. Well, it becomes really easy on them when the narrative out in the community is saying defund the police. Okay, great. That means I have extra money to do what with? Whatever my pet project is. No, at the end of the day, police still have to protect us. They still have to serve us because that's what our taxpayers have them there to do. So we need to start investing in how do we spend more money in recruiting officers of color, people from the community that the people on the streets know. I've always said that whenever you have an officer on the beat in any area, it should be somebody that comes from that area.
Right.
But we've gotten away with so many rules in Cincinnati, at least, that an officer can come in and patrol and do whatever in any area and go outside the city and sometimes outside the county to live. I think when you put policies in place, and this is again where don't defund, let's redivert to say, should we have residency rules that says if I'm an officer in Bond Hill that is assigned to that beat in Bond Hill and that's where I got to patrol and do what I do, maybe I should live there, because if I'm from there and I live there and I work there, perhaps I may get a different response out of how I'm interacting with those people that are living in that community. I think that makes all the difference in the world. So defund the police, absolutely not. I think we need to retrain the police and we need to redirect funding within police budgets to say, where do we need to take advantage of getting out of this, what we are seeing to be a continual problem.
Yeah, I agree. We're running short on time here. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you coming through. Earlier you mentioned re-election. It's almost re-election time for you coming up in November. If they're not convinced yet, why do they deserve your vote? Deserve their vote?
I always say, I don't just want your vote. I don't want to ask for it. I want to earn it. I say, take a look at my record. At the end of the day, a lot of politicians can go on cameras. They can say a lot of things. But at the end of the day, do your homework. This is the time where we got to dig in deep and do our homework and understand where people are. Check my record. I've been there for 2 years. I've voted on things. I've voted on things that are relevant to what we're talking about today. Look at that record and make sure that it reflects what I'm saying when I'm out talking to people. If that makes sense, do it. If you've reached out to me and you've talked to me and I was able to move something along and you knew I was there, tell that story to somebody else, because again, I can't do it all on my own. This is something where it gets around and it does what it does. Share that story and let them know that, hey, this is somebody worth taking a look at. But I never want to go in and just say, vote for me because I'm going to do this, or this. Vote for me because you know that every day I'm working for that or that or that. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing it in a way where I'm not going to pretend to you that I'm in the majority at the State House and can get everything done overnight. But what I'll do is use this time and use this platform to push down those barriers that can help start to make that happen. So maybe will I see it within term limits that I want to get everything out of it? Maybe not. But maybe will I push down some barriers and set some parameters that things for those to come in my position will get those results? Perhaps. And so if that's what we get out of it, that's what we get. But I don't want to pretend that you're going to get something out of this overnight. I want to be straight up, honest, legit, and let you know I'm working every day. And I always tell people, come to Columbus, spend the day with me and understand what it's like, see what it's like, walk around with me and spend some time. And then you'll kind of hopefully understand that I'm just real and I'm just trying to do the job that I was elected to do, which is in a nutshell why I would say support me.
Well, you got my vote.
Yeah, and something else, we'd love to team up maybe in a couple months or so and make sure people actually get out to the,
if you do a
to the polls and stuff, and help the cause.
That would be great. There's a lot going on. A lot of other big cities are doing it, and I haven't seen us do it in a mass effort in Hamilton County yet, so I'd be happy to help.
On that note, can we do a little toast?
This is just, I don't have alcohol in mine. I think they do.
Oh yeah.
Don't ask what's in the cup.
Don't ask.
Hold on. We usually let the guests.
Yeah, you guess. You gotta
what
make
are we
a toast.
toasting to?
Justice.
Like that.
Like that a lot. To justice.
One word,
Justice.
powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. Shout out to State Representative Sedrick Denson for coming through, man. Appreciate you again.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely
I appreciate it.
Yes,
Awesome.
yes.
So we'll be back. We got Chris Crooks in the booth. He's gonna spit some hot fire. One of our favorite artists in the city. So stick around. Be right back.
Yeah. Cruise chef on the motherfucking boards. Donuts and alcohol in the motherfucking building. Dirty 30, I'm in Dayton, fucking with Cougar Divas. Read the post on Daily Chiefs, they said I'm the reason. Where he at, who he is, you know I gotta meet him. 30 days, 30 nights, all Akahol season. Keep it wavy like it's Murray's way, my palms greasing. I'm from where these niggas kill you for your Jordan sneakers. Depending on how niggas sound, they bustin' like a tweeter. And I'm on campus with that sack, I'm swiping like a Visa. A bunch of Angela Rides, it ain't no Condoleezas. And they gon' hold a nigga down every time I need it. Like an industry album, it's all about the features. Like you rollin' with Michael, you niggas gotta beat it. I hope it ain't no problems when I wake. Text my mama every day, she know I'm safe. Got Clico clicking by the case, I like the taste. Man, I was lost, but then a nigga found a way. Sometimes it ain't about the trip, it's all about the journey. Run that back a couple times, make sure you niggas heard me. Kept it real my whole life, so you can never perk me. We got the vote for the mood if these hoes thirsty. Life ain't been a crystal stare, get a mental glare. My barber asking what's my problem, I've been losing hairs. Do so much of it on the socials, I don't like to share. And bitches rubbing on my belly like the older flare. When I whisper in her ear, she feel the coldest air. Got mob ties over there, you know the gang near. 60 on the residential, cause my lane clear. We was building on the block when you was building bears. I ain't proud to say I took advantage when you cared. So when she tell me I'm that nigga, I just look and stare. I hope you living by your word before you give it to me. She booked a room at the Drury, we bout to make a movie. I hope it ain't no problems when I wake. Text my mama every day, she know I'm safe. Got Clico clicking by the case, I like the taste. Man, I was lost, but then a nigga found a way. Sometimes it ain't about the trip, it's all about the journey. Run that back a couple times, make sure you niggas heard me. Kept it real my whole life, so you can never perk me. We got the vote for the mood if these hoes thirsty. Yeah. We got the vote for the mood if these hoes thirsty. Chris Crooks, even in a drought. Protect and inform yourself, Black Power.